Hey Denchbags, what's going on? It's Landon Remixes. This has been a long time coming. It's time for my review of the debut EP from Vicetone. This one is called Aurora. Now I'm going to try my best to make a completely unbiased review because I know a lot of you have come to this channel from my Vias for Vicetone mixes, which I'm absolutely completely appreciative of the amount of support I've gotten over the years for those mixes. I've been a huge fan of Vicetone ever since they first started making music, basically since Harmony and Heartbeat came out on Monster Cat. I've been super into Vicetone, and now, to be honest, I was kind of concerned when I heard they were coming out with an EP, as they had announced just last year, I think, maybe late 2014, that they weren't really planning. They had a lot of material coming, but they weren't really ready to put out an album or a larger collection of works other than singles and remixes. So when they finally decided that they were going to drop an EP, and the fact that it was coming out on Spinnin' Records, I was a little bit worried to see what we were going to get. And probably rightfully so, because I'm not really in love with this EP. A lot of this is very similar styles to stuff we've been seeing in the last year, such as, for example, both Brightside and Siren's drops are very similar to the kind of thing we saw on Nothing Stopping Me Now, which was an early 2015 single. And I wasn't even in love with that one when it came out, so when they decided to kind of push back into this style again, I wasn't really extremely thrilled. On the other hand, we get the one track Don't You Run, which I feel like was the closest to the kind of classic Vicetone style that fans like me have been itching to hear for quite a while. And then on a different note, we've got tracks like Brightside featuring Cosmos and Creature, which kind of seems like it's supposed to be a little bit of an Avicii sound, where Avicii in the last couple of years has been trying to push a little toward folk and country, and that's kind of where they're going with this one. I was actually really hyped to hear the full version of this track, which I hadn't listened to yet, after their Ultra Music Festival performance, which they combined this track and another one called Bring Back the Groove, which blended really well together and made a wicked intense mashup. I really love that one. Would definitely prefer that over the end result of the original mix, because it made such a good combination and didn't use that kind of standard Nothing Stopping Me Now kind of Vicetone sound. And of course you can't blame them, because they've been into the heavy orchestral sounds for quite a while. Even the first song I ever heard by them, Harmony, was heavily centered toward that more orchestral sound. And if we're hearing violins for the kind of lead synthesizer, on the other hand, just kind of hearing the same style repeated is really bugging me. I did like Siren quite a bit. While this one's quite not experimental as much, it sounds fairly close to Vicetone's early 2015 sound. You know, even after hearing tracks like this, I really want to see them go more toward the direction of their Invincible Kelly Clarkson remix, which was a bit more experimental, and maybe even their Tovlo and Urban Cone remix they did as well. I'm just really liking the kind of more experimental stuff they've been doing, and I feel like this EP, for the most part, doesn't really stretch that as much as it could. I really want to love the other side, but for the most part, what I'm really digging on this one is the vocals. The drop gets extremely repetitive because it's kind of the same thing, and there's very limited amount of diversity on this thing, which maybe could have cut it back very heavily. Green Eyes, on the other hand, is a complete 180 for Vicetone style, kind of taking that maybe early 2000s tech house kind of sound and revisiting it with a new and better productive style, and something extremely different from anything I've heard from Vicetone yet. This one has a lot of horns in it, which is really cool to hear. This one also has a very similar whistle to tracks like Pitch Black that also released on Spinnin' Records just a few months ago, and that was kind of cool to hear as well. I think this is the most diverse and interesting listen on the EP, which made it very enjoyable. Not necessarily something I might get down to, especially in my sets, but extremely respectable to see Vicetone doing something a little different with this track. Basically, I feel like what could have been a really solid and diverse debut EP and could have featured a lot of different sounds and everything ended up having a lot of repeated styles and repeated sounds just in the tracks themselves that I feel like really screwed up the feel of the EP and made it a little more boring than it needed to be. I think Vicetone's got a really awesome year ahead of them, however, following this EP. I've heard some of their upcoming tracks, and I know for sure that some of the stuff is going to be super diggable. About this EP, though, I'm going to give it a solid 5. I don't question it. I feel like that's what it deserves. I've been a big Vicetone fan for a long time. This definitely isn't their best work, and it's definitely not their worst. They're a duo with a lot of promise, and I love them to death. And all these tracks are going to be on Vias for Vicetone Volume 4, given that you guys want to see Volume 4. Even if you don't, check out the Spotify link in the description. You'll hear it then. So that'll be in December, so you might want to listen to it now. Check out that link in the description. Let me know what you think in the comments after you've listened to it. Anyway, I'm Landon Remixes, and I'll see you guys later. Peace.